Juveniles have always been treated humanely because it is believed that every underage criminal could be re-educated and corrected. However, despite compassion, one teenager was still shot. What for? Let's talk about it in today's video. Arkadiy Vladimirovich Neyland, Soviet underage criminal who in the January of 1964 committed a double murder in Leningrad and was sentenced to death, which was contrary to the legislation in force at the time of the crime, since back then Arkadiy Neyland was only 15 years young. Neyland's case caused massive public outcry and gave rise to statements about the violation of human rights of international law in the USSR. Arkadiy Neyland was born on the 28th of January in 1949 in Leningrad in a proletarian household. His father was a locksmith and his mother was a nurse in a hospital. He suffered from his stepfather's abuse, malnourished, and often ran away from home. According to his own words, he was registered in the children's room of the police since he was 7 years old. When he was 12, he was expelled from school for theft and poor progress, and was put into a boarding school from which he ran away because of constant theft from his peers and enuresis. He left to go to Moscow, where he was arrested by the police and deported back to Leningrad. Until the end of 1963, he worked at a company, Lenpishmash, where he often was engaged in theft. There were also several cases of hooliganism. He teased girls, beat passers-by with brass knuckles, and committed burglaries, but these cases never reached out the court. On January 24, 1964, Arkadiy was once again arrested by the police for theft. However, he escaped from custody. Neyland said that then he decided to give revenge by committing some kind of scary murder. At the same time, he wanted to get some cash to leave to go to a resort in Sukhumi and start a new life there. He fulfilled his intention on January 27th, the day before his 15th birthday, having previously stolen an axe from his parents for this purpose. The picture of the crime was recreated according to Neyland's testimony, interviewed witnesses, forensics, and firefighters. It was committed on the 27th of January in 1964 at Sestroretskaya Street, house number 3, apartment 9. This house wasn't chosen randomly by Arkadiy. Exactly there, when he was 4, he stole a flashlight from an unfamiliar boy. Allegedly, while collecting waste papers, the teenager planned future robberies. He wanted to rob a rich apartment. The owner of the apartment had a golden tooth, and a colored TV with a radio speedola were visible from a distance. 27th of January 1964, the teen came to commit the robbery. At the time of the robbery, 37-year-old owner of the house, Larisa Mikhailovna Kupreeva, and her 3-year-old son, Yura, were home. Neyland knocked on the door and introduced himself as a postal worker, after which Kupreeva led him inside the apartment. After making sure that there was no one else in the apartment except the woman and the child, the criminal locked the front door and attacked Kupreeva. In order for the neighbors not to hear the screams, he turned on the speedola radio on full volume. After several hits, Kupreeva stopped showing signs of life. After Neyland killed her small child, so that he, as Neyland said, wouldn't interfere in his business. After the murders, the criminal searched the whole apartment, stole money and a camera on which he previously took photos of the dead body in obscene poses. According to his words, he planned on selling these photos later. After committing the crimes, the criminal calmly ate breakfast. 57 rubles, a pack of bonds, camera, Zorky, and groceries from the fridge, a bag with apples and oranges, disappeared from the apartment. In order to hide the traces of the crime scene, before leaving, Neyland turned on the gas on the kitchen stove and set the wooden floor in the room on fire. The axe was left by the criminal at the place of the crime scene. The neighbors who sensed the burning smell called the firefighters. Due to the fact that the firefighters arrived promptly, the crime scene remained virtually untouched by the fire. According to the fingerprints left at the crime scene and thanks to the witnesses that saw Arkadiy Neyland that evening, he was arrested in Sukhumi. Already during the first interrogations, the criminal admitted full guilt over his actions and actively helped the investigation. According to the investigators, he behaved confidently and was flattered by the attention to him. He spoke about the murder calmly without remorse. He only felt sorry for the child, but justified his murder by the fact that there was no other way after the murder of the woman. He wasn't scared of the punishment and said that since he is a minor, he will be forgiven. In February 1964, Neyland was transported with a convoy from Sukhumi to Leningrad and was put in the Leningrad Kresty. During that time in the USSR, there was a massive increase in crime, including among minors, and Neyland's case received wild publicity. The court's decision in Arkadiy's case was passed on March 23, 1964, and was unexpected for everyone. A 15-year-old teenager was sentenced to death, which was contrary to the legislation of the RSFSR, which was in force at the time the crime was committed, since the teenager was only 14 years old. Back then, only people from 18 to 60 could be sentenced to capital punishment, and the application of the death penalty to minors was forbidden in the USSR. However, on the 17th of February 1964, the Presidium of the Supreme Council of the USSR put in place a resolution that allowed the use of a capital punishment for minors' execution, which was caused by the desire to reduce the growth of juvenile delinquency that was emerging at that time. This resolution was put in place after Neyland's crime, but before its consideration and the final decision by the court on it. Therefore, in view of the exceptional cruelty of this crime, the court delivered a sentence in accordance with the new judgment of February 17, 1964, applying its retroactive effect. Arkadiy Neyland was shot on August 11, 1964, in Leningrad. From the beginning of 1950s, the Soviet Union experienced an increase in juvenile delinquency. Under these conditions, Arkadiy Neyland became a clear example of an anti-hero. The Criminal Investigation Department was under pressure from the central apparatus of the Ministry of International Affairs. The death sentence in this case was issued on the basis of decree of the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR, which was issued only on February 17, 1964. Neyland became the only teenager that was shot in the post-war USSR, but wasn't the only teen killer that was shot in the USSR. In 1940, Vladimir Vinichevsky, who was underage and killed 8 children in the years from 1938 till 1939. Unlike Neyland, in Vinichevsky's case, there was no need to apply retroactive force of the criminal law to pass the sentence, since at that time there was a joint resolution of the Central Executive Committee and the Council of People's Commissars of the USSR on measures to combat juvenile delinquency, which provides for the introduction of the death penalty from the age of 12. Neyland's sentence to the death penalty provoked controversy in the society. From one side, the citizens that were shocked by the cruelty of the crime awaited for the harshest sentence for Neyland. From the other side, the verdict caused negative reaction from some of the professional foreign lawyers who pointed to the discrepancy between the verdict and the previous legislation and international agreements. Neyland's case became public outside the country, where it was simplified and didn't include any details. It was brought as an illustration of the neglect of a law under the socialist system, although even there the use of the death penalty back then was quite a common practice. For example, in the USA, only in 1988, the Supreme Court banned the death penalty for those under 15 years of age. Nevertheless, Neyland's case turned out to be politically remarkable in that, when referring to it in polemics, the game was usually played on deliberate silence about significant differences in the then existing laws and the practice of their application in the USSR and in the USA. According to the words of the deputy chairman of the Supreme Court, Vladimir Terebilov, a petition was sent to the head of the government, Khrushchev, about the illegality of applying retroactive force, which is applying the law that came out after the crime was committed but was refused. This case has several inconsistencies, since it was said that on the 27th of January there were no traces and clues found. However, Neyland was already arrested on the 30th of January, thanks to the fingerprints found on the crime scene. He was also accused of setting the house on fire. Supposedly, he turned on the gas and set the floor on fire, but his fingerprints weren't found on the kitchen stove nor on the axe. According to the investigators, his fingerprints were destroyed by the fire, but the photographs do not show any traces of burning at all. The murder weapon, an axe, was found by the criminalist only on the third day after the killing. The experts conducted a series of 200 experimental cuts with the axe, and only one matched with the marks on the bones of the skull. Vadim Kupreyev, the husband of the deceased, reported that a camera Zorky went missing from the apartment. A veteran employee of a police museum, Lyubvin, claimed that he argued with the authors of the documentary film Young Animal about this crime, since the policeman arrested Neyland as a suspicious person because he had a camera Kiev, which at that time was an expensive thing. In that exact movie, the protocol of the arrest was shown, which was signed only in the March of 1964. However, according to Rakitin, Neyland was arrested already on the 30th of January. Young Animal, the 69th episode of a documentary project, the investigation was conducted. Many experts still argue, was Neyland truly guilty, or was just a victim of an ostentatious execution to calm the criminal youth at that time? Even though that this isn't a burning topic now, many questions still remain unanswered, and perhaps nobody except Neyland himself knows whether he committed these murders or not.